Mr. Andy Saunders, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Andy. I'm good. Yeah, really, really good.
Good man.
Good.
Mate, it's great to have you on.
Thank you.
You're yet again one of the first guests I've got on this Diving Deep podcast, where I sort of invite people on from all corners of the music industry to talk about their journey.
Yeah.
I know for a fact, because I know you well, you've had a fairly colourful one, so we're going to get into some of that. But yeah, I just want to give you a bit of an intro for people that don't know you. So Andy Saunders, long-time DJ,
Yeah.
past raver, not so much
Yeah.
these days, but a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Equipment supplier, once at one point, a big vinyl junkie.
Yeah.
But you've been around the scene a long time, mate, haven't you?
Yeah. 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 No, I have. You're right.
And still here to tell a tale, which is good.
Yeah, go on. Go on. Yeah.
Place I'd like to start from is was first talk about dance music, really. So where did it all start for you?
God, so I'd probably say it was way, way back. I suppose I was about 15 years old. Now we'd all sort of got into hip hop and break dancing. Now music, obviously electro music, was a big part of that, which I suppose was like the early form of what we call dance music now. And that was how I first got into actually, I wanted those tunes, which I heard.
Yeah.
So obviously it was the sort of street sounds, electro, and the street sounds albums at the time.
Yeah.
Big albums they were.
Yeah.
And because the 12 inches in particular were so hard to get hold of at the time, obviously those street sounds LPs were the go-to format.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was how I sort of first got into actually buying the music and appreciating the music from playing it in your own room. That was obviously before I started DJing.
Yeah.
And I think that from that scene, obviously DJing was a big part of that scene, wasn't it? Learning to scratch.
Yeah.
I never learned to scratch, as good as that. Never have done. But that was where it all sort of started, where it all came from, really. Yeah. That was where I started collecting vinyl. And it all stemmed from that. Yeah. Very early on.
So from there, so that would have been that would have been probably like the late 80s, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would have been sort of 85. Yeah.
Okay.
Around 85. And those early movies as well were very important, weren't they? They were big influence on yourself at the time, being young. Seeing them dance, hearing those sort of music. I first remember hearing that Kraftwerk Tour de France tune on the breakdance movie, and seeing, was it Turbo, dance to that, and thinking, oh my God, that tune was just like something I'd never heard before. And then and then obviously going down to what was that? There was a record shop on the Parade in Leamington Spa. Was it Music Market?
Yeah.
Finding the 12-inch in the racks there, and thinking, it was like a piece of gold, wasn't it? Really, in those days.
That the scene you're talking about really came before the sort of like rave scene, didn't it?
Big
before that. And then the rave scene was like the late 80s, then getting the 90s, wasn't it? So I want to fast forward a little bit to that. So what was your first sort of introductions into the sort of rave scene starting to come about?
Yeah, so I suppose the late 80s, house music became, really big.
Yeah.
Like Steve Still Curly, Jack Your Body, getting in the charts.
Yeah.
Became more sort of club orientated, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then I suppose where did the rave, the sort of the rave scene evolve from that? I would have thought. Warehouse, you'd read in magazines, Mix Mag or whatever, you'd just hear these warehouse parties, up north, and you'd think, right, I want to become a part of that. And I remember there was it was a Coventry, even before Amnesia House, there was parties at the Sky Blue Connection in Brighton.
Yeah.
And you know, we just liked going to parties. I wasn't a raver then. We just liked going to parties. So, you know, everybody went to that party. And yeah, you know, you sort of, you'd be in amongst 1,000 people, and it was just incredible. You'd never seen anything like that or heard anything like that before in your life, because, you know, that seeing the lasers, you know, you'd never get those sort of that sort of lighting in a club situation.
Yeah.
The sound systems, massive sound systems. You'd never hear that music in a club. Not like, you know, you can hear club music now pretty much any club or bar you go to. You'd never hear that music on the radio in a club situation. But you'd go to those parties and you'd just be, you know, it'd be wow, just listening to those sort of tunes. Yeah, now I suppose that's where. And that would have been late 80s, 89. Yeah. And then from that point on, I suppose it was the same for everybody, you know, at that time, wasn't it? It grew. We all grew together.
At the time that, obviously, I mean, looking back now, obviously before my time, but looking back now, it's obviously classed as quite a revolutionary period for certainly younger people in the UK. But obviously you were there around it and you were watching it happen and, you know, to a degree part of it. Did you realise, I suppose at the time you didn't realise that you were having quite a big imprint on.
You certainly didn't realise it was going to be. Yeah. You didn't realise it was going to be so big. But then saying that, it quickly grew into a very large scene. Very quickly, didn't it? Or not just, you know, throughout the whole country. You know, there was your big, you know, London parties that would pop up around the M25. There was your warehouse parties in Manchester and further north. So you sort of knew you were a part of a scene, didn't you? And then I suppose it was when the Eclipse opened in Coventry. Yeah, that was the first all-night rave club. And then people would come from all over the country, literally all over the country, to that club. And that was, I think that was a big focal point for me and a lot of people, you know, because you used to go to those parties. I used to work in a record shop at the time, so we used to go to those parties on a Friday night, then on the Saturday, no sleep, go straight to work on Saturday morning. Of course, you'd be rooting through the racks then. Tracks that you'd heard the night before, you know, and you'd been asking all the record company people as they come in the door, you know. And it was a special time, Andy. It really was. It was quite a special time. Yeah, it was good.
So like, I want to just touch on sort of like whatever way we look at it, drugs has always gone hand in hand with dance music. So obviously the introduction of like ecstasy. How did you see that from your perspective? Like what changed? Because I mean, whatever way you look at it, it's categoric that had a big influence on the scene, definitely. Didn't it?
It was something that you know, drugs were always a part. You know, I think drugs were out there, and I think they were more prevalent in the dance scene, especially. But they still are, and they were out there everywhere at the time. Now, ecstasy was something that was new, that I found it was after I'd got into the music, and I'd already been to a few parties at the time. But I think it was more of seeing everybody else and seeing what a good time everybody else was having. Thinking, you know, what the hell is this? You know, I want to try some of that type of thing. It literally was like that. And and I suppose it went from there, didn't it, really? And me, like many others, millions of people all over the world, I suppose, it just turned into a weekend thing. You know, weekends were for parties, weren't they? And that's the way it ended up. And I suppose my job inevitably went that way, really. Because then I started DJing in a club. This was way after that. You know, I was always, weekends were always, you know, I preferred working at weekends type thing, you know, and I think that's where it all sort of stemmed from, really.
Well, I wanted to chat because you've done various things in the music industry. So, you know, I want to talk like right back to the beginning, because I know, like you say, you worked in a record shop and you've done different things that I know we've spoke about, as friends. So yeah, give us a bit of a run through for, like, where did it start in respect of your working life in the music industry?
So there was a local independent retailer, Midlands based, called Discovery Records. It was run by a guy called Bob Barnes. There was a shop on, was it Regent Street in Leamington Spa, a little shop in Regent Street. They later moved to the top of the parade in Leamington Spa. I think the name changed as well. It was called Music Junction when they moved to the top of the parade. That, yeah. Now, I started working for them when it was Music Junction at the top of the parade. And really, it was sort of like a dream job. Because, you were surrounded by music. A lot of the time I was getting told off, for listening to records all the time and not doing any work. But for me at the time, it was perfect, because I was also doing, I suppose it started off, and I was a mobile DJ before I was a club DJ.
Yeah.
So it was a good way of getting music cheaply. Because as you know yourself, the music, the money, we used to spend on records a week. Sometimes you could easily spend £100 a week was nothing, was it?
No.
So it was a good way of me getting sort of cheap music, really.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started from there. I then moved to their branch in Stratford-upon-Avon in Belcourt, where I sort of started off my own little dance section. And we used to buy a lot of American imports and Italian imports. I then started getting DJs coming over to me to buy music from me, because I bet that the imports we were getting were the best in the area.
And that's what everybody wanted, wasn't it? Everybody wanted those US imports.
Yeah, exactly. And from that point, I got a job in distribution. So it was for, when you used to get reps coming into the record shop, they'd have a new track. They'd be saying, look, have you heard this? Heard this?
Yeah. And
I got that job, basically. It was working for a small independent London company. They were based in North London. And I was like their Midlands representative. I had a van, a Mercedes Sprinter, racked out, full of vinyl. I would say there's probably 50, 60,000 vinyls in this van. It was racked from bottom to top with vinyl, mainly 12 inches, but LPs as well, CDs. We used to do, the music was across the board.
Yeah.
So we used to do things like all the reggae on like green sleeves. We used to do a lot of big drum and bass labels, Andy C's Ram label. We used to do V recordings, Ronnie Size's label. And it was basically because we were totally independent, the artists felt like they could come to us. There'd be no pressure on having to sell units. Some of the tracks I'd get, no matter how many, how hard I tried to push it to the shops, they just wouldn't. They wouldn't have it. Sometimes certain types of music, you've got to be based in London. London, not so much now, but at the time, this is going back 15, nearly 20 years ago. London was the tastemaker city,
the hub,
and if you wanted to sort of break a new sound, you had to be in London, or it had to be sold in London. But yeah, it was a great job, Andy. You've seen my record collection still.
This is a man with quite an impressive record collection. A whole room's worth. So and for me, I don't think I could explain. I think it was on a Monday morning, I'd have to go to Hard to Find Records. Now, you've obviously been to Hard to Find Records when it used to be there. Yeah.
It was a warehouse full of vinyl, wasn't it?
Yeah. Huge.
You're having to go there once a week. I'd probably spend about 2 hours. First, I'd do my little bit, do my job.
Yeah.
And I sort of go through their racks, listening to tunes, and you get to know people, don't you, in the shop? So you start getting the best tunes.
Yeah.
And it was a dream job, to be honest. It was a dream job. But then from that, all of a sudden, vinyl sales just suddenly went, didn't it?
Yeah.
Went.
Yeah.
Like what was that site we always used to use? Was it LimeWire? Remember LimeWire?
Yeah.
That were that's
Jesus, that's going back a bit.
Sites like that literally killed the industry off.
Yeah.
Overnight. It was literally overnight.
Yeah.
I'd say within a couple of weeks, there was 6 reps, including the London one. Everybody in the country had lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And it was only the one guy in London who was, still going around doing his job. It literally went overnight. And it was a time of change, wasn't it? It was a big time of change.
Technology really was changing, people were moving away from vinyl onto, well, at that time it was CDs, wasn't it? Before USBs. But yeah, I remember it dropping off quite considerably, quite quickly.
Yeah, it really did. And even when we used, from that point, there was another change, wasn't there? When MP3s came along, because then you started getting sent the music in MP3 format. Yeah. So then you had to burn the MP3s to your CDs. Yeah. Do you remember doing that?
Yeah.
So you'd have to spend like a good few, 3-4 hours a week burning all your tracks to CD, because at the time the CDJs didn't take USB.
No, mate. Honestly, like making CDs then, like what we do now, dropping them into record box and putting them in a playlist. People don't appreciate the graft that went into. Firstly, when it was vinyl, having to carry all of it around. Like carry 3 or 4 record boxes around, especially when you're pissed. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't know where your records are. Remember that? The next day, you don't know whether you brought them home with you.
Oh my God!
I mean, mate, for everybody listening, this is a man that's in the best way I can describe as you've partied, mate.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you've DJ'd for a large majority of that in different settings, now much more professionally, but back in the day when you were DJing in clubs, I mean, I can imagine quite a few times you did not know where your records were.
Yeah, as we've spoken about before in conversations, Andy, there weren't camera phones back then. Nobody, you had a phone, but it was like, it was like a brick that you couldn't get in your pocket. Times have changed now, haven't they? You couldn't have too much fun when you were behind those decks. It was easy to have a lot of fun. Whereas now you can't do that, can you? So, the whole it's completely changed.
You can get exposed very easily now, whereas back then, actually, unless people were there on the night and they might have been as inebriated as you, it wouldn't have mattered. But I mean, I've heard a few telltale signs of you getting naked and amongst other bits.
That did happen a few times. That really did. No, it was some fun times. To be fair, I could probably say too many fun times. I don't know whether sometimes I regret it, think I could probably be in a different place financially now if I had been a bit more focused at the time. Like yourself, very focused about your music production. Whereas at the time, I think I just, for many years actually, I just enjoyed it too much. It was just something you enjoyed, wasn't it? My job, I enjoyed my job, but I didn't make much money because I'd probably just blow it all on the night out.
What was from a DJing perspective, aside from what you do now, what was the most fun sort of like place you DJ'd, or most fun residency, or just whatever, what was the most, from your perspective, what was the most fun you've had?
So I DJ'd, my main residency, I think, was at a place called Munro's in Leamington Spa, which is still on Spencer Street. Still a club. I can't remember what it's called now. Is it called Neon? I think it's called Neon.
In its early days was really quite good, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, we used to put some good DJs on there. Now, I did a Thursday night residency there, which was a student night. And the main sort of ethos of the night was to bring all sort of styles of music together, especially big tracks that were big in the sort of at the universities and the colleges. So there'd be a lot of sort of, northern indie tracks, your Happy Mondays, your Stone Roses. Indie music was a big part of the night, but would also play, big rave tracks. What was going on at the time in the clubs, and also some, just really cheeky, funky numbers at the end, which people would remember after they've left the club. And you know what? People will come back week after week after week after week. And it was one of the biggest student nights of the area. We were probably averaging on a Thursday night at least 1,000 people every week for years and years and years. There wasn't many places that could do that in the area. No. There wasn't many places that could do that, in the Midlands, for God's sake.
It was a really good venue.
It was a great venue. And you know what? To have 1,000 people in the palm of your hand is quite a special thing. And that is the feeling you get from dropping a track, no matter what style of music it is, and seeing all those hands go in the air and hearing the impact it has on those people. I think that's the most special thing that I can take away from all that. And even now, that's even when I play now, doesn't matter where it is, if it's a birthday party or a wedding or a corporate event, you can still incorporate those things you've learned at that stage, tracks you played, and you can still give people those special moments, I think. And I think that's what I've taken away from, that's what I've learned from those days being a resident in Monroe.
You are like I've said to you before, like in my opinion, you are truly a skilled DJ, because, and this is not to downbeat any of the younger crew or anything like that, but it's changed a bit now, where a lot of the younger crew, they just DJ one style of music and they just play for a small amount of time, whereas you're really experienced, played lots of different sorts of music, but a lot of the times, and even now, you're playing for 4 or 5 hours at a time at corporate things and private stuff, and you have to be a man to lots of different sorts of people. And I know how skilled you are in respect of, like, you can play anything, drum and bass, house. So if you get booked for anything, you can do a really good job for them. But I suppose I just wanted to talk a little bit about like, these days you're a bit more open format, aren't you? And what that sort of like, what would you say? Because I know how difficult that can actually be at times. And, I know that's mainly what you do now. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's the differences really between actually doing that style of DJing.
In the different genres that I play.
Bringing them all together, and people wanting different things, different age groups, different scenarios, the differences between doing that and just being booked in a club to play a 2-hour set of house music.
Right. Okay. So I think, like I previously said, being the resident at that student night at Monroe's, I think that was what that night was all about. It was bringing together, because it was 99% Warwick University students, who themselves were exactly like me. I'd been a student, 3 years before that. So I knew what was being played in the SU. I knew what we were hearing out, at the student nights. And I think I just thought, right, I can do that, but you know what, I can make it a little bit better. And it's totally different to mixing a house set. And you know what, sometimes I do find it, I don't know whether I could do a 4-hour house set. I don't think many like, DJs do these days.
Like boredom, or
I don't know. I don't know whether it's boredom, because I love the music, but I always like to throw something else in, you know. So, you know, if I'm playing a house set, I'd love to, you know, drop a drum and bass track in there, or a breakbeat, or a breakbeat track. Now, I know there is, you know, there's A-list DJs that do that to this day, isn't there? But there's not many.
No.
You know,
a bit too risky, isn't it? Really? They would look at it.
I think you've got to really got to know your crowd. You've got to know that you can get away with doing that sort of thing. And you know, that's pretty much what I've always done, what I still do now, really, and what I still do. I think that's where it came from.
Yeah, because like dropping those different tracks in your sets, like we've spoken about this before, it gives the set a bit of a spike, doesn't it?
Yeah,
people aren't expecting it. When they hear it, it just moves it in a slightly different direction for a bit. So that, you know, when you come back to whatever it is that you're doing, people feel like they've had a bit of a different experience, don't they? Rather than just being house music. So I completely agree with that. And like you say, if you can get away with it wherever you're playing, it can really like move people up a notch, can't it?
I think it's probably an age thing as well, Andy.
Yeah,
it's probably an age thing. You know, you know, when you know, way back then in the early 90s, 1990s especially, you know, you used to hear, you'd hear a techno track, then, you know, there'd be a breakbeat track. There might be like a more, you know, down tempo track mixed in to the same set, you know, and you'd hear DJs playing those type of sets. And I suppose it all sort of stemmed from that.
It's where it all started from. I mean, like, if you, like, obviously, again, before my time, but I've read about it and watched things about it. But when the DJ culture first got over here, it was obviously pretty much off the back of the fact that, like, the likes of Paul Oakenfold and that had been to see Alfredo in Ibiza. And that's what he was doing. He was like playing these, what are called like Balearic sets or eclectic, whatever. And he'd be playing like Italian pop next to Bob Marley, next to, you know, like lots, there was no boundaries. Whereas now at the real top level, there's a lot of boundaries, isn't there? You know, that, you know, if you're at a house music event, it's just house music, where actually when these guys brought that culture back over here in like the late 80s or early 90s, like even Oakenfold, who's probably like the first superstar DJ, he used to run a night, didn't he, called Spectrum or something like that. And he would say, like, you would hear anything from like LL Cool J next to the Beastie Boys next to a house track, you know, and that was just acceptable then. But that culture is a lot, for the most part, faded out, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. Everything, you know, everything is a lot more categorized now. And I don't know why that's happened, but we have to be able to categorize a night, or if we get sent a track, you know, we have to be able to categorize it, don't we? So we have to put it in its place. It's strange. It's one of the reasons why, you know what, a lot of DJs say, you know, I hate doing private parties. I could never play a wedding. But you know what? If you take those elements that from way back then, and you put it into a set, either a wedding or you know, a birthday party, you know, people can tell that there's some thought gone into that, and that you're not just pressing play on, you know, on a computer or whatnot. There's actually some thought gone into it, and it still works. It definitely, it's a style that still works, and it still works for me.
I'm sure you would agree that, and I said this in one of my previous podcasts that will come out before this, but in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, playing a 4-hour open format set to either, I don't know, like a corporate thing or a private party, and that, to me, that is harder than playing in a club for an hour or two. Correct?
You know, it's hard work. A lot. It depends on the crowd you're playing to, I suppose. It always depends on the crowd, doesn't it? And I think it's up to you. It's up to you as the DJ, no matter who you're playing for or what type of event it is. It's up for you to try and inject, if the crowd aren't feeling it and they're not dancing, it's up to you to try and inject it to get them dancing, and if that doesn't work, try something else. And if that doesn't work, you try something else. Definitely. Until you get that format which is working. And from that point, sometimes, Andy, as you know, it might take 3 hours.
100%.
We've both done parties. Sometimes it just doesn't work until the last track.
No,
we spoke about this the other day. Sometimes you can do a party, and up until the last couple of tracks, it just
you don't know whether or not they're into it.
It doesn't mean to say that people haven't enjoyed themselves. It doesn't mean to say that. Sometimes those, sometimes they are the nights that give you the best feedback, because you know what, people leave those nights saying, that's the only bit that they remember. That's the bit that they remember. And as long as they leave feeling happy and feeling good, that's all that matters. I think it's when it becomes, if you're standing there literally just thinking, I don't want to be here, pressing play one after another in a random playlist. I think that's the point when people just think, that DJ was.
They can tell, can't they? They can tell that you're not interested in trying to make it happen.
They can definitely tell. No, you're right.
So I want to go back to I know you've obviously collected a lot of music over the years in different formats, and what would you say is was the first dance track? Now it could be anything, drum and bass, house, whatever, that really had a really strong impact on you, where you first heard it and thought whoa, fucking hell, this is wicked.
Well, as I said earlier, I think some of those early, what were classed hip-hop electro records, I think, and some of those tracks, you can still play now. Kraftwerk Tour de France, it's a cult record. You could play that now. Any DJ all over the world could play that track. And you'd be classed as, hailed as a god, wouldn't you? I suppose it was that track in particular sticks out. It was one of the first sort of 12 inches that I ever bought. Still remember the cover, the blue, white and red cover with a cyclist on. So I suppose, even though it wasn't classed as club music at the time, it was tracks like that that really sort of hit home. Going forward, I'm trying to think. God, that's a difficult question, mate. That is a really difficult question.
Putting you on the spot a bit, because I know you've obviously been doing it quite a long time and you've collected a lot of music. But thinking if there's any particular ones.
A track that always, I pretty much still play it in almost every set these days, is obviously Candy Staten, You Got the Love. You know what? I don't think I can remember a time where that track has never worked on pretty much any dance floor. Because obviously it got remade. Florence and the Machine remade it. So then the original becomes a bit of more of a cult classic, doesn't it? And you can play that to a group of 50 plus somethings. You can play it to an 18, 21-year-old. You can play it anywhere, and you know what, it will still fill the floor, won't it? So I suppose that intro
is wherever you are and you hit play on that, the reaction is amazing. That intro is I think you'll probably struggle to find any better intros in dance music, really. Apart from maybe there's been a few that make Born Slippy. That's another one. When that first note hits, does something to people, doesn't it? But
it was the genius of bringing that a cappella and bringing that Frankie Knuckles Your Love track together, because on their own, obviously they both came out as singles, and on their own they're two totally different, you know, they don't have the same impact.
No.
But you bring those two tracks together,
yeah,
you know, with that bootleg, which it was a bootleg, wasn't it?
Yeah, just a bootleg,
and you know, and it has such, and you know that if you get the right bootleg, you know, and it's been proved many times, hasn't it? Many times.
Powerful. Yeah.
It can be massive. It can be massive. We spoke about it before, haven't we? Like the Bushwhacker mix.
Finally,
you know, yeah. And
the bootlegs almost, they become bigger than the original tracks, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. They really do. Yeah. So, you know, I know you do a lot of edits. So, you know what? If you find the right edit, mate.
it could be the trip to, you know, that's it, mate. We could be living it up in Ibiza for the rest of the summer. But no, like bootlegs. I speak to you quite a lot about the edits that I do. I do them primarily for my sets, but then I do put them out generally to other DJs because they often do like them if they're quite good. But bootleg culture has become not as don't get me wrong, there's still loads of bootlegs around, but now, because like a lot of pops, say for instance, like a lot of the reason why people did bootlegs, it was because the tracks would come out, they'd like them, but they couldn't play them in their sets. So they'd do a bootleg or either mash it up or change it up a bit so that it could bring on a different life. The only slight problem is now is that most newer music always have dance remixes attached to them. So like the effectiveness of the bootleg is like become a little bit harder because like it's like, well, they've almost already got a bootleg remix attached to them. But I still feel like a good bootleg can get a lot of attention, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think you know, most of the ideas have probably been tried now, but you know yourself, you know, there's still the opportunity to find the right little bootleg that might work.
I'll tell you a classic one that I'm thinking about that you'll probably have to tell me this more than me, but I'm pretty sure never actually got a proper release was the drum and bass version of Ready or Not.
Yeah.
I don't think that ever got a full release, did it?
No.
It was just a bootleg, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I was listening to DJ Zinc, one of DJ Zinc's podcasts earlier, and he was sort of saying how many units of those, you know, vinyl 12 inches that they used to sell. And, you know, it was mad, the amount of vinyl that used to sell at the time on a bootleg like that.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking sort of 40, 50,000, you know,
amazing,
all over the country, which is absolutely crazy. You know, nowadays, you know, even when I was working in distribution, you know, if you sold 1,000 12 inches, that was pretty good. You know, that was good. Whereas God knows now, surely like
very hard, mate.
How many you can't even be a couple of hundred, surely.
If you sold 1,000 copies of a track, you'd probably be like certainly in the Beatport top 10, if not maybe Beatport number 1. It's quite funny because back in the record shop days, it was so much better because the reality is, like you say, if you've got that bootleg and you're a distributor doing the job you used to do, and you walk into that vinyl shop that you know the person who runs it and say, listen, mate, I've got 20 of these or I've got 50 of these and have a listen to this, it's wicked. Then what the record shop owner would do is, obviously, if you were a regular in there and he knew that was your thing, he'd be like, mate, listen, I've got this, like, have a listen to this, it's wicked. And you thought he was doing you a massive favour, but actually he was shifting that onto you, and because you trusted him, he'd be like, right, I could definitely get these 20 guns. Everybody who walks in, mate, have a listen to this. You know, remember what's the film? It says, you got any drum and bass, mate?
Hard to find, especially were renowned for doing that, weren't they? They did their own bootlegs of bootlegs. So I remember if I had a sought after track or a bootleg, say I had 1,000, that they would have the lot. They would have the lot. And you know, I don't know whether they'd even admit to it. that they used to bootleg bootlegs, and they used to sell thousands and thousands and thousands.
Smart,
it really did.
Really. Yeah. I mean, like, the funny thing about it is that, you know, I'd go in the record shop on a Saturday the one down the bottom of town, Good Life Records, and he'd already have a little stack ready for me, and I think, oh, this is brilliant, like, you know, like, and he would know, end of the day, I'm going to buy 4 or 5 records. I'm going to spend 40, 50 quid every Saturday, all the time. Yeah. It'd be like have all these little, like, these little piles for people, because he knew that chances are, of the 10 he gave them, they were going to buy 3 or 4 or 5 every time. So it's like a guaranteed sale all the time. And to be honest with you, I always brought the stuff, because he'd be like, mate, there's not many of these. He probably lied through his teeth. He probably had about 500 downstairs, but I loved it anyway. You know,
I think that those moments, like when you think about it now, were really special, because to have those people behind the counter, and you walking into the shop, you know, it would save you having to root through the racks, you know, and it was just, it was such a special moment, you know.
It was buying pretty much person to person, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, it was.
Whereas
it was
now
good times.
It's very impersonal, you know, like selling music to people. I mean, I've just started a mailing list, because I want the people on that mailing list to hear what I'm doing first and foremost, get the freebies, and then hopefully, if they like the records I'm putting out, they'll buy them and stuff like that. But sorry,
mate. Getting a call. Sorry, mate.
It's all right.
Right, I can see off now. Sorry.
But like, that's probably about as personal as you can get, is really having a mailing list of people where you can talk to them directly. Whereas actually back in the day, it was actually person to person, wasn't it? You walk in the shop, you know the owner of the shop or the person who works there. They want to sell you records. They know what you like. And then there was a relationship there, wasn't there?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It really was. Yeah, you're right. No, it was fun times. And that was why it was quite sad when all that ended. But, you know, it's the same with many industries. We move on to new things, don't we?
Yeah.
And you know what, now, I think we're at the point now, I've still got a real passion for music, all genres, especially dance music. I still do buy music if it's not either Beatport, Track Source. Still buy a few vinyls every now and again from Juno. And I think it's about, first and foremost, it's about being a music lover, isn't it? That's less about
basically what it boils down to.
Yeah, it is. So that's what it is.
I want to ask you to try and tell me one of your funny rave stories. So tell me a funny story from the past, something that you thought was funny that sticks out that you'll never forget.
Well, I can remember.
That you can remember, yeah.
God, Andy, you put me on.
I have, yeah.
You put me on a pillar now, mate. Oh my lord. Oh God, funny stories from a rave. Oh God, am I allowed to tell it on the TV?
Yeah.
Let me think. Oh God. Can we swear on that one? Let me have a think on that thing.
Yeah.
I'll have to think on that. Next question.
Right. So 3 pieces, we'll end on the funny story then. So 3 pieces of advice that you would offer somebody getting into the industry or is already in it, or, you know, from your experience of being in it for quite some time.
So I get asked this from, you know, a lot of parents actually, with youngsters wanting to get into it. I think first and foremost, it's like we were saying a few minutes ago, is being into the music, you know, collecting your music, whether you're collecting it on, you know, on iTunes these days, or, you know, a lot of, we still buy tracks off iTunes or wherever we buy it. And I think that's the first and foremost thing, is by having your music collection.
Yeah.
And then from that point, you know, knowing your tracks inside out, knowing the good bits of that track, you know, and putting those good bits all together.
Yeah.
Either throughout a 4-hour set, or if you're just doing like a short mix.
Yeah.
Trying to put all those good bits of those tracks into your set or your mix. And I think that's the sort of that's what will get you noticed. And it's about the music.
Yeah.
You know, the technology I think can come later.
Yeah.
But you know, if you've got a good selection of tracks, I think that's what will get you remembered.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Definitely. So you want me to go back to the rave moment? Oh my God!
Go on, then. Yeah, go on.
I don't know whether I can. There's been so many, Andy. I don't. There's been many. Some of them I don't think I can actually say on the TV.
Give us one that you think you can.
So me and my a good mate of mine, we got booked to play abroad in a club in Spain, and we got over there. Bizarrely, this club was in the basement of a block of flats, and in the basement was a nightclub. It was a decent club, you know, 500-600 capacity. It was our first night playing, and we'd been out. The promoter had took us for a meal early doors, given us drinks, you know, from late afternoon. And when we started DJing, we were sort of like doing 2 off, 2 on. So my mate would play 2 and I'd play 2. And I'm sure many old school DJs and even new school DJs can sort of relate to this. I pressed play on the one deck, mixed it in, you know, the mix was going beautifully, had the crowd in the palm of my hands, and then took the needle off the wrong record. And I literally, you know, there was 600-700 people there with no music in the club, and it took me 2 seconds to think, what's happened? Then you sort of realise, you know, throw the needle back on the track, and it, you know, hope to God, you know, it probably doesn't even go in the right place. And I think that's what I think many DJs could probably relate to that as well. I think that's probably quite a comical moment, mate. It was.
Mate, we've all done that. I mean, it's even worse now with CDJs when you're taking over from somebody and you don't. If you happen to be a bit drunk and you don't quite realise which one's on USB or link, or better still, you pull the wrong USB out. It's not even as easy to recover, is it? Where you can't just put it back on. It's literally. I mean, I did it quite a while ago, but it's quite easy unless you're paying attention to hit the wrong play button when you're taking over from somebody on a CDJ, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Now, if it's a really important, you know, I always make sure that I put that lock setting on the CDJ before I start my set.
100%.
I always put it into lock.
Yeah. Just in case. Yeah. Just in case you hit the wrong, you know, send it to the wrong deck by accident. Yeah, mate.
Yeah, definitely.
Easy done.
Brilliant. Excellent.
So last two pieces of advice you'd offer people getting into the industry.
So yeah, as I just said, you know, from young DJ's point of view, I think the music is the key. Obviously now, social media is a massive part of it as well, which I'm not as up on as probably you are yourself or any of the younger DJs, but I think at the end of the day, it's got to come down to the music. It's got to come down to the music. It really has. And, you know, these days we see a lot of, you know, stars off the TV getting into it. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's got to come down to the music, you know, and if you're playing good music, if you're producing good music, I think that's got to be at the heart of it. It really has.
Let the music talk, sort of thing.
Yeah, really has. Yeah, that's where it's at. Yeah.
Number 3.
Yeah. Do you know what, mate? I don't think I've got number 3. I think that's all
Don't
I've got.
take drugs, kids. That should be number 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get too battered.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Trying to do it. So where can sorry, actually, mate, before we leave, so I just want to talk a little bit about what you do now. So obviously you do open format DJing for private events, different sorts of private events, and you do private equipment hire as well. And that's been something that you know, those two businesses have ran alongside each other for a while, haven't they? And you supply to some small festivals, and so how did the equipment thing come about, just very quickly?
So the equipment side of it came about quite by chance, really. There was one of the more popular bars, Leamington Spa, at the time, hadn't got any, well, it's the same even now. A lot of bars haven't got CDJs or didn't have CDJs. I had 2 sets of CDJs, and this bar in town just started, you know, because I play on one of the nights. On the other nights, there were other DJs playing, and they just said, "Look, can we hire these off you for the night?" And I said, "Yeah." And at the end of the month, they used to pay me. I used to think, "Wow, you know, I'm getting a half decent amount of hire fee off that." And that's how it started, really. And had I had more money to invest at the time, probably would have invested a lot more, but it just took time to be able to get that money in to invest in more equipment. And now I think I'm at a point now where it's going quite well now. You know, we do hire for assembly. I'm doing Chase and Status this weekend on Friday, doing the full deck setup for them. Do Casbah, got Patrick Topping coming up in a couple of weeks for Casbah. And it's good. It's good to have. It's good to know that you know, when I have to finally hang up the headphones, probably in a couple of weeks, I've got something to fall back on. So, and that's probably what I'll be falling back on.
I think, mate, it's fair to say that, and we've spoke about this obviously off camera many times, that you've really, like, I wouldn't say you've been lucky, because that's not the case, but you've really been like in a situation where you've really lived like a really like interesting life, and you've been able to do, you're pretty much working within a scene that you really have enjoyed, and it's, you know, it's amazing, really, because most people don't get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think it's come from basically me only wanting to be involved with something that I enjoyed doing, and even if it meant working for less money, which I did for many years. I think it was all about I only want to do this. And you know what? If I do have to scrimp and scrape on other things, then that's what I'll do, because this is what I want to do, and this is the only area that I want to be working in, basically. I think that's what it is.
And I think for people that come across this sort of like podcast show and that, I think that is probably like quite a poignant sort of message, really, and a good point for us to start sort of almost end on, is because you are right. You know, you've pretty much done this because you really enjoyed it, and part of that is that you don't get paid lots of money at the start, but you were all right with that, and you just found means to get by and stuff like that. But it's meant that you've basically, for most of your life, been able to do something that you've genuinely really enjoyed, haven't you?
I think it makes you, I think it can make you a happier person. You know, knowing the fact that you're enjoying what you're doing. Either it be from 9 to 5, or it be from 7 till midnight, or it be throughout the rest of the night. I think you feel better in your soul, and you know yourself.
100%.
You do.
100%. So where can people find you, mate, if people want to get in touch with Andy Saunders?
So obviously my website is out there, andysaundersdj.co.uk, which is just an overview of equipment available, and some of the services I provide. My Instagram is probably my biggest. I'm not that great with social media, but my Instagram is quite popular, at Andy Saunders DJ. So yeah, it's probably there, or they can just contact you and you can pass it on to me.
Yeah. I mean, I say for anybody who comes across this or listens to it, you know, I can really attest to the fact that if you want somebody who can basically do it all in respect of, you know, different sorts of music, skilled DJ, this is the man that you really want to get in contact with, because he is what I class as a seasoned pro. And he has the most premium equipment, and there's probably, you know, unless you're looking to throw like a Glastonbury style festival, then he can make it happen on a good scale for you. So, you know, a personal friend of mine that I've got to be honest, mate, we've had some pretty funny times, haven't we? But yeah, I've got to say, it's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much.
Make sure all your links and everything are below when the video comes out.
Thank you.
You stay on, because I'm gonna finish it, but stay on. So yeah, we'll end there, mate.
Brilliant. Right. Thank you.